I never thought I would miss the apartment we used to live in. The thin walls, the neighbors screaming through them, the smell of burned food drifting through the hallway every evening, the man upstairs who dragged his furniture across the floor at 2 in the morning like he was trying to rearrange hell itself. I used to hate that place. I hated the peeling paint, the leaking ceiling, the old woman next door who smoked so much that our towels always smelled faintly of cigarettes, no matter how many times I washed them. But at least, in that apartment, I knew what I was afraid of. People. Loud people, drunk people, angry people, lonely people, human things. Now, sitting on the freezing kitchen floor of the farmhouse at 2:47 in the morning, 7 months pregnant, both hands wrapped around the handle of a cast iron skillet like it was the only thing standing between my daughter and whatever had crawled out of the basement. I understood something. That apartment had never been a nightmare. It had been shelter, because the thing inside this house was not human, and it had been waiting for my baby long before I was even born. It started with the letter, not an email, not a phone call, a real letter. Thick yellow paper, black ink, my maiden name written across the front in a careful, old-fashioned hand. The envelope came from a lawyer in a small town I had never heard of, somewhere in northern Pennsylvania, near the edge of the Allegheny Woods. According to the letter, my great-grandmother, Eleanor Whitlock, had left me a house. That was the first strange thing, because until that letter arrived, I didn't know I had a great-grandmother named Eleanor Whitlock. My mother barely talked about her side of the family. Whenever I asked, she would say, "There's nothing worth remembering there." Then she changed the subject. I thought it was just family drama. Everybody has old stories they don't want to talk about. But this was different. The house sat at the end of Black Hollow Road, about an hour outside the nearest real town. The lawyer described it as structurally sound, though in need of updating. My husband, Daniel, read the letter 3 times. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because we were broke. We were young. We were exhausted. And we were expecting our first child. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, where the floor vibrated every time the dryers ran. The bathroom window didn't shut all the way. The heater clanked all night in winter and barely worked when we needed it. Daniel worked long shifts doing electrical repairs. I had stopped working at the dental office because my pregnancy had become harder than expected. Money was tight, too tight. So when a house appeared out of nowhere, even an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, Daniel saw salvation. "A house, Claire," he said, standing in our tiny kitchen with the letter in his hand. "An actual house, no rent, no upstairs neighbor, no laundromat downstairs, no mold in the bathroom." I sat at the table, one hand on my stomach. "She left it to me," I said. "Why me?" Daniel shrugged. "Maybe you were the only one left." That should have bothered me more than it did, but I was 7 months pregnant, tired and desperate to believe that life was finally giving us something back. So we drove out the following weekend. Black Hollow Road was narrow, cracked and swallowed by trees. The GPS lost signal 20 minutes before we arrived. The farther we drove, the quieter Daniel became. The woods pressed close on both sides. Not pretty woods, not the kind people hike through on bright fall mornings. These trees looked old and crowded and sickly. The house appeared after a bend in the road. 2 stories, white paint weathered to a dirty gray, a wraparound porch sagging slightly at one corner, tall windows with dark glass, a rusted weather vane shaped like a rooster turning slowly on the roof, though there was no wind. Behind the house stood an old barn, half collapsed. Beyond that, only trees. Daniel smiled. I didn't. The moment I stepped out of the car, my daughter kicked hard enough to make me gasp. "You okay?" Daniel asked. I nodded. But I remember looking at the house and feeling something I could not explain. Not fear, recognition. Like the house had seen me first. Like it knew exactly who I was. For the first 2 weeks, I almost convinced myself I had imagined that feeling. The house was old, yes. Strange, yes. But it was ours. Daniel threw himself into repairs. He fixed loose floorboards, patched wiring, replaced broken locks, cleaned gutters, dragged rotten furniture out of the barn. I scrubbed cabinets, washed windows, lined drawers with fresh paper, unpacked baby clothes into the upstairs bedroom with the best morning light. We painted the nursery pale yellow, not pink. Daniel said yellow felt warmer. I liked that. At night, we sat on the porch and listened to crickets. Sometimes deer moved at the edge of the woods, like shadows with bones. It should have felt peaceful. Sometimes it did, but the house had sounds, not old house sounds. I know what old houses do. They settle, they creak, pipes knock, wood expands and contracts. This was different. There were soft footsteps in empty rooms. A dragging sound inside the walls. A low tapping from the basement, always in sets of 3. Tap, tap, tap. Then nothing. Daniel said it was pipes. There were no pipes in that wall. The first thing that disappeared was a pair of scissors. I had left them on the windowsill in the nursery while cutting tags off baby blankets. The next morning, they were gone. I found them 3 days later in the attic, stuck point first into the lid of an old cardboard box. I blamed myself. Pregnancy brain. That's what people call it when your own mind starts betraying you. Then my favorite mug disappeared. It was white, with a little blue bird painted on the side. My mother had given it to me when I moved out. I found it under the bathtub, not beside it, under it. Wedged deep behind the clawfoot leg, filled halfway with dark soil. Daniel frowned when I showed him. Maybe a mouse dragged something in there, he said. A mouse dragged a ceramic mug under the tub. He looked at me for a moment too long. Then he smiled. Okay, a very ambitious mouse. I laughed because I wanted to, because the alternative was letting the fear in. Then came the robe. I had taken a shower after dinner. When I stepped out, my robe was gone from the hook on the bathroom door. I called Daniel, annoyed, thinking he had moved it. He hadn't. We found it 10 minutes later, at the basement door, pinned to the wooden frame with a long black nail. Not caught, not hanging, pinned. The nail had gone clean through the fabric and deep into the wood. Daniel had to use the claw end of a hammer to pull it out. He didn't joke that time, neither did I. That night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe, because that was the only way I can describe it. Not wind, not pipes, a slow, hollow inhale from somewhere below us, then a long exhale through the walls. I put one hand over my stomach. My daughter was still, too still. "Daniel," I whispered. He didn't answer. I turned my head. He was awake, staring at the bedroom door. The clocks stopped at 2:47, all of them. The old grandfather clock in the living room, the little battery clock over the kitchen sink, the alarm clock beside our bed, even Daniel's watch, which he swore had a new battery. I woke because the house had gone silent. That may sound strange, but silence can be loud when you're used to noise. The ticking had become part of the house. Then it was gone. I opened my eyes. The bedroom was black. Not dark. Black. The moonlight that usually came through the curtains was missing, as if something had covered the windows from outside. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up. 2:47 a.m. Beside me, Daniel stirred. "What is it?" he mumbled. The clock stopped. He exhaled. "Claire, all of them. It's the wiring. The battery ones too." He said nothing. Then, from below us, came the tapping. Tap, tap, Tap. Daniel sat up. I heard his breathing change. "You heard that," I whispered. He swung his legs out of bed. "Stay here. Daniel, don't." But he was already moving. I watched him open the bedroom door and step into the hall. The floorboards creaked under him. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. Then a sound I will never forget. From downstairs, somewhere near the basement door, a woman whispered my name. Claire. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft enough to be mistaken for memory. Daniel froze in the hallway. I saw his silhouette stiffen. "You heard that," I said. He turned back. Even in the dark, I could see his face had changed. But when he came back to bed, he said, "It was the wind. There is no wind. Go to sleep." He lay down facing away from me. His shoulders were rigid. I knew then that he had heard it, and I knew he had decided not to believe it. That was the first night I felt truly alone. The basement door was in the kitchen. Heavy wood, rusted latch, old scratches around the handle like animals had clawed at it from the inside. Daniel hated that basement. He said it smelled bad. He said the stairs weren't safe. He said I shouldn't go down there while pregnant. But one afternoon, while he was at work, I needed a jar of pickles from the shelves below. I had been craving them for days. I opened the door. Cold air rolled out, not basement cold, winter cold. My breath fogged in front of my face. The stairs groaned under my feet as I descended with my phone flashlight on. The basement had a dirt floor and stone walls. Old shelves lined one side. Mason jars sat in dusty rows, their contents dark and unrecognizable. The smell was damp earth, mold, and something sweet underneath. Rotten fruit, or old flowers. I found the pickles on the second shelf. Then my light caught the far wall. At first I thought it was mold. White-gray patches spread across the stone in uneven shapes. Then I moved closer. They were handprints, dozens of them. No, hundreds, pressed into the stone. Some were small, infant small. Some were adult-sized. Some had fingers too long to belong to anything human. They didn't look painted. They looked pushed out from inside the wall, as if people trapped behind the stone had pressed their hands through it while the rock was still soft. My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the dirt floor, light spinning wildly. In that moving light, the handprints seemed to shift, not move, just become aware. Then something touched my ankle. I screamed and stumbled backward. There was nothing there, but in the dirt floor beneath me, fresh marks had appeared, tiny footprints, bare, wet, like a newborn child had walked in circles around me. I ran. I don't remember climbing the stairs. I only remember slamming the basement door and throwing the latch shut with both hands. When Daniel came home, I dragged him into the kitchen. "You need to see it." "See what?" "The walls." He looked tired. "Claire, I've been at work for 11 hours. Please." Something in my voice made him stop. He took a flashlight and went down first. I stood at the top of the stairs, one hand gripping the railing, the other pressed against my stomach. He was down there for a long time, too long. When he came back up, his face was pale. "Well?" I asked. He wouldn't look at me. "It's mineral staining." I stared at him. "What?" "Efflorescence. Moisture gets into old stone, pushes salts out, makes patterns. Patterns with fingers. Claire. No, don't do that. Don't say my name like I'm a child." He rubbed his face. "I'm not saying you didn't see something scary. I'm saying old houses have weird things in them. There were footprints." His mouth tightened. "In a dirt basement? Yeah, probably raccoons. Newborn footprints, Daniel." He looked at my stomach, then away. "Maybe you shouldn't go down there anymore." That was all. Not, "I believe you." Not, "We should leave." Just, "Maybe you shouldn't go down there anymore." After that, the house stopped pretending. I began seeing figures in doorways. Not full bodies, just suggestions. A shoulder slipping out of sight, a head leaning back around a corner. A tall shape standing at the end of the hall when I passed a mirror. Every time I turned, nothing was there. The nursery changed first. I had arranged everything carefully. Crib by the window, rocking chair in the corner, a small dresser with folded onesies in the drawers. One morning, I opened the nursery door and found the crib turned around. The mattress had been dragged halfway out. The mobile above it was spinning slowly. There was no breeze. I called Daniel. He didn't answer. I stood in the doorway, listening to the soft clicking of the mobile. Then the music box began to play. It was sitting on the dresser, closed. A thin, broken lullaby filled the room. My daughter kicked once, then went still. I backed out and shut the door. For the rest of the day, I stayed downstairs. At 2:47 that night, the music box started playing again. From inside the walls, I tried to talk to my doctor. I didn't tell her everything. How could I? How do you sit under fluorescent lights, surrounded by posters about prenatal vitamins, and say, "I think something in my dead great-grandmother's house wants my baby"? So I said I was anxious. I said I was having trouble sleeping. I said the house made me uncomfortable. She smiled gently and asked if I had support at home. I said yes. That was the first lie. Daniel was there physically, but something had begun to pull him away from me. He stayed late at work more often. When he came home, he smelled like cold air and beer. He spoke less, slept heavily, avoided the basement door with the carefulness of someone avoiding an open grave. Once, in the middle of the night, I woke and found his side of the bed empty. I went downstairs. He was standing in the kitchen, facing the basement door. "Daniel?" He didn't move. I stepped closer. His hand was on the latch. "What are you doing?" He flinched so violently that he slammed into the counter. For a second, he looked terrified, then angry. "What the hell, Claire? You were opening it." "No, I wasn't. Your hand was on the latch. I was getting water. There's no glass." He looked down at his empty hands, then past me, up the stairs. "I heard something," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "What?" He swallowed. "A baby crying." We stood there in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold floor, neither of us breathing properly. Then from behind the basement door came a soft scrape, like fingernails sliding down wood. Daniel stepped back. "Pack some clothes," I said. He shook his head. No, we can't just leave. Daniel, we don't have anywhere to go." "My mother." "For how long? A week? A month? And then what? We lose the house? We go back to that apartment with a newborn?" I stared at him. He looked ashamed, but not enough. "This house is wrong," I said. His voice cracked. "Maybe we are." That was the moment I understood. The house wasn't only frightening us, it was separating us. I found the journal in the attic. I had gone up looking for old sheets, thinking I could cut them into burp cloths. It seems absurd now that I was still trying to prepare for a normal baby while the house whispered around me. The attic smelled of dust, mouse droppings, dry wood, and lavender. There were trunks stacked under the eaves. Most were empty or full of moth-eaten clothes. The last trunk was different. Black wood, iron bands, a lock that had rusted open. Inside were folded quilts, brittle lace, old photographs, and beneath them a leather-bound book wrapped in a gray shawl. The cover had no title. The first pages were ordinary. Recipes, household notes, measurements for preserves. Then, halfway through, the handwriting changed. It became smaller, tighter, desperate. I sat on the attic floor and read until my legs went numb. The journal belonged to Eleanor, my great-grandmother. But the story began before her. Black Hollow had not always been empty. There had been a settlement there once. a mill, a church, a handful of farms. Then children began dying. Not all of them, only firstborn children. Stillbirths, crib deaths, fevers no doctor could explain. The families left one by one, except mine. The Whitlocks stayed. According to Eleanor, the land beneath the house had been used long before the town existed, before churches, before roads, before names. People had come to that hollow to ask things from whatever lived under the ground: rain, harvest, fertility, survival. And they paid. Always, they paid. Eleanor wrote that the women in our family had carried weak children for generations, babies who died before birth, babies who lived only hours, babies who never cried. Then one of them made a bargain. The journal never clearly said who, maybe Eleanor's mother, maybe someone before her, but the words were there, written over and over, as if Eleanor had copied them from something older. First blood opens the door, first breath belongs below. Give the first, and the rest shall live. I read that line again and again. First breath belongs below. My hands began to shake. There were names listed in the back of the journal. Mary Whitlock, first child stillborn. Samuel Whitlock, first child stillborn. Rose Whitlock, first child, died before sunrise. Eleanor Whitlock, first son, born silent. Then below that, Margaret, spared. Helen, spared. Thomas, spared. Claire. My name stopped halfway down the page. The ink trailed off, as if whoever had written it had been interrupted, or as if the page had been waiting for the rest. I don't remember standing. I only remember the attic tilting around me. My daughter kicked once, hard and sharp beneath my ribs. That was when I understood. The thing in the house had not been watching me. It had been watching her. I drove to the nearest church the next morning. I didn't tell Daniel. The church was small, white and old, sitting beside a cemetery full of leaning stones. The priest was younger than I expected. Father Thomas, tired eyes, kind voice. I told him enough. Not everything, but enough that his expression changed. He asked to see the journal. I showed him pictures of the basement wall, the handprints, the small wet footprints in the dirt. He didn't tell me I was imagining things. That scared me more than if he had. He came the next day. Daniel was home when Father Thomas arrived. The look on my husband's face could have frozen water. You called a priest? I called someone who might help. Daniel laughed once, a hard, ugly sound. Claire, this is insane. Father Thomas said nothing. He walked through the house with a small silver cross and a bottle of holy water. He prayed in each room. The air seemed to thicken around his words. In the nursery, the mobile began spinning. Father Thomas stopped mid-prayer. The music box opened by itself. One note played, then another. Then the lullaby slowed until it sounded like something dying. Daniel's face went white, but still, he said nothing. When we reached the basement door, Father Thomas didn't touch it. He stood in front of it for a long time. Then he whispered, "How long has this been open?" "It's not open," Daniel said. Father Thomas looked at him. "I don't mean the door." He sprinkled holy water over the threshold. The water hissed. Not metaphorically. It hissed like rain on a hot stove. A black line appeared in the wood where the drops landed. Daniel stepped backward. Father Thomas crossed himself. "We need to leave," I said. Daniel didn't argue then, not immediately. Father Thomas told us to stay somewhere else that night. A hotel, a relative, anywhere. He said he would make calls. He said there were people who knew more about old places than he did. But when he left, the house became still, too still. And Daniel changed again. He sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, staring at the basement door. Then he said, "We can't afford to run from shadows." I turned to him slowly. You saw the water. I saw old wood react to liquid. You heard the music box. Maybe the floor isn't level. I almost laughed, but his eyes were wet. He wasn't dismissing me because he didn't believe. He was dismissing me because believing meant admitting we had brought our child into a house that wanted her dead, and he couldn't survive that truth, so he chose the lie. 3 nights later, we had the worst fight of our marriage. I had packed a bag, not a dramatic one, just enough for me, the baby things, and the journal. Daniel found it by the front door. "What is this?" "I'm going to my mother's." "No, you're not." I looked at him. Something in his voice frightened me. "Excuse me? You're not driving 3 hours alone at 7 months pregnant because you scared yourself reading old diaries." "The diary has my name in it. It has a lot of names. It has dead babies in it, Daniel." He slammed the bag onto the floor. "Listen to yourself." The house seemed to listen too. The walls went quiet. "You need help," he said. I stepped back, not because he came toward me, because his voice had become gentle. That was worse. "You're exhausted," he said. "You're not sleeping. You're seeing things. You're connecting random old family tragedies to our baby because you're terrified of becoming a mother. That is not what this is. Then what is it, Claire? A demon? A curse? A monster in the basement?" "Yes." The word came out before I could stop it. Daniel stared at me, then his face broke, not into fear, into disgust. "You're going to hurt her," he whispered. I felt all the blood leave my body. "What?" "Our daughter. If you keep going like this, if you keep spiraling, what happens when she's born and you think something is after her?" He slammed the bag onto the floor. "Listen to yourself." The house seemed to listen too. The walls went quiet. "You need help," he said. I stepped back, not because he came toward me, because his voice had become gentle. That was worse. "You're exhausted," he said. "You're not sleeping. You're seeing things. You're connecting random old family tragedies to our baby because you're terrified of becoming a mother. That is not what this is. Then what is it, Claire? A demon? A curse? A monster in the basement?" "Yes." The word came out before I could stop it. Daniel stared at me, then his face broke, not into fear, into disgust. "You're going to hurt her," he whispered. I felt all the blood leave my body. "What?" "Our daughter. If you keep going like this, if you keep spiraling, what happens when she's born and you think something is after her?" I turned on every light. Kitchen, living room, hallway, bathroom, nursery, bedroom. I locked the doors. I put a chair under the basement latch. Then I sat in the living room with my phone in one hand and the journal in the other. Daniel didn't answer my calls. At 11:13 he texted, "Stay home. We'll talk tomorrow." At 11:41, "Don't do anything stupid." At 12:06, "I mean it, Claire." After that, nothing. The house settled around me. The lights flickered once, then steadied. I tried to stay awake, but pregnancy exhaustion is not like ordinary tiredness. It drags you under. Sometime after 2, I drifted off. I woke to a baby crying upstairs. Not a vague sound, not wind, a newborn cry. Thin, wet, desperate. My body reacted before my mind did. Milk had already begun coming in those last weeks, and the sound made something deep inside me twist with instinct. I stood. The cry continued, from the nursery. I whispered, "No." The stairs groaned as I climbed. Halfway up, the crying stopped. The hallway was bright. Every light upstairs was on. The nursery door stood open. Inside, the crib was empty. Of course it was empty. My baby had not been born yet, but the yellow blanket I had folded over the crib rail was on the floor, wet, dark, dripping. Something thick fell from the ceiling onto the blanket. Plop. I looked up. The thing was above the crib, spread across the ceiling like a spider made of smoke and bone. Long grey limbs bent backward, a narrow torso pressed flat against the plaster. Its head hung upside down on a neck too long to be real. It had no eyes. only 2 black hollows. But I knew it could see me. Its mouth opened, too wide. A black liquid slipped from it and fell onto the crib mattress. Then its head turned completely around, slowly, until those hollow places faced my stomach. My daughter began to move violently, not kicking, thrashing, like she was trying to escape deeper into me. I backed away. The thing moved, not fast, not yet. One limb detached from the ceiling and placed itself on the wall, then another. It began crawling down. The lights flickered. I turned and ran. The first contraction hit at the top of the stairs. Real pain, deep, crushing, undeniable. I nearly fell. "No," I gasped. "No, no, no, not now." Behind me came the sound of something sliding down the wall, then the ceiling, then the stairs, not footsteps, a wet dragging. I stumbled into the kitchen, grabbed the cast iron skillet from the stove and backed into the corner between the old oven and the sink. The basement door was in front of me. The nursery was above me. My phone was in the living room. Another contraction bent me almost in half. I screamed through my teeth. The basement latch lifted by itself. The chair beneath it scraped backward. The door opened. Cold air poured out. And from the darkness below came the sound of children whispering. Not one child, many, too many. They whispered my name. Claire, Claire, Claire. Then, "Give the first." I gripped the skillet harder. No. The handprints appeared on the kitchen walls, one by one. Wet gray palms pressing outward through paint, cabinets, windows, the refrigerator door. Small hands, tiny hands, infant hands, then larger ones, long-fingered ones. The whole house seemed to push toward me. The thing emerged from the basement. It had changed. Upstairs, it had been thin, almost fragile. Now it filled the doorway. A tall, shifting shape made from smoke, ash, and something darker underneath. Its limbs bent wrong. Its body seemed unfinished, as if it had never needed to be seen clearly before. The cold coming off it made my teeth chatter. Another contraction hit. I dropped to one knee. The skillet clanged against the floor. The thing leaned forward, and I understood something. It had not killed me. It had not taken my baby. Not because it couldn't reach us. Because it was waiting. Waiting for fear to make the choice for me. Waiting for me to believe the bargain was real. Waiting for me to give up. The journal. Eleanor's words. It requires payment. It does not steal. It collects what is given. I lifted my head. No. The thing stopped. The whispers stopped with it. My voice shook, but I kept talking. I didn't make your bargain. The black hollows fixed on me. My daughter didn't make it either. The walls trembled. You took frightened women and made them believe they had no choice. The thing opened its mouth. The sound that came out was not a roar. It was a baby crying. Then another. Then another. Hundreds of cries layered together until my skull felt like it would split. I covered one ear, but kept my eyes open. No, I said again. Stronger. You don't get her. The thing moved toward me. I grabbed the skillet and swung. I don't know what I expected. Metal passed through smoke, but the thing recoiled, not from pain, from refusal. The handprints on the walls smeared downward. The whispers became shrieks. The basement stairs cracked. I don't give her to you, I said. I don't offer her. I don't trade her. I don't bargain. Another contraction tore through me. I screamed, but I did not look away. You can stay under this house until it rots into the ground. You can whisper. You can crawl. You can wait. I raised the skillet again, but you will never have my child. For a moment, the thing became almost solid. I saw faces inside it. Not one, many. Women, children, open mouths, empty eyes. Then something small moved near the basement door. A baby's handprint appeared on the wood. then another, then hundreds. But this time they were not pushing out. They were pushing in. The thing twisted. The shriek became unbearable. The kitchen window exploded. Glass sprayed across the floor. Cabinet doors flew open. Every clock in the house struck 2:47 at once. Then the thing collapsed inward. Not vanished, collapsed, like smoke being sucked through a crack in the world. It dragged itself backward into the basement, clawing at the floorboards, at the door frame, at nothing. The last thing I saw was its head rising out of the dark, those hollow eyes fixed on my stomach. Then the basement door slammed shut, the latch dropped, and the house went silent. I don't remember calling 911. I remember crawling into the living room. I remember blood on my legs. I remember telling the operator my address again and again because she kept saying she couldn't understand me. I remember hearing sirens far away, then close, then red light moving across the ceiling. My daughter was born at 5:18 that morning, healthy, screaming, alive. They placed her on my chest, and the moment I heard her cry, I broke apart. Daniel arrived 2 hours later. He looked destroyed. He kept saying he was sorry. I didn't answer. When he reached for our daughter, I turned away. The nurse noticed, so did he. We did not go back to the farmhouse, not together. My mother drove me home from the hospital, and by home, I mean her guest room 3 hours away, where sunlight came through white curtains and no clocks ever stopped. Daniel went back to Black Hollow Road a week later with movers. He said the house looked normal, the basement door was closed, the handprints were gone, but the cast iron skillet was still on the kitchen floor. The handle was twisted sideways, as if someone had tried to wring it out, like cloth. No one could explain that. The house was sold 6 months later to a developer who wanted the land. It burned down before closing. The report blamed faulty wiring. Daniel had replaced the wiring himself 3 months earlier. That's always what people say when they need the world to make sense. Daniel and I divorced before my daughter turned 1. I don't hate him. That surprises people, but fear makes cowards out of many people, and that house knew exactly where to press. My daughter is 6 now. Her name is Lily. She is healthy, bright, loud, stubborn. She hates sleeping with her closet door open. I never told her anything about Black Hollow Road. I never told her about Eleanor, or the journal, or the firstborn children, or the thing under the house. But last week she brought home a drawing from school. It was our house, not the farmhouse. Our house now, small, blue, with flowers in the yard. There were 2 stick figures in front, me and her, and underneath the house, drawn in black crayon, there was a tall shape with long arms. I asked her what it was. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. That's the underneath man. My hands went cold. I forced myself to smile. What underneath man, baby? She went back to coloring. The one who knocks when you're sleeping. I couldn't breathe. Then she added one more thing, quietly, like she didn't want him to hear. He says you promised him no. That night, at exactly 2:47, every clock in the house stopped. And from beneath my daughter's bedroom floor, something knocked 3 times. Tap, tap, tap.